Now you should be able to
Super.
record from
Thanks.
as well. Good. Yeah, so you're in Niemenheim.
You know it?
I do. My wife and I spent a been a couple of times in Chiang Mai. We spent a winter in Chiang Mai. Really nice. My favorite coffee shop, Ristretto. I don't know if it's still there.
Oh yeah.
On Neiman.
Oh, good choice. You went to the
yeah,
trendy one. You don't mind
yeah,
paying 20 baht extra.
I did actually. I did like it there. And my wife, as a jazz singer, she played at the Chiang Mai Jazz Festival a few years ago as well. So we had another trip back
Cool.
as well. So yeah, so we love Chiang Mai.
I can't believe it. Yeah, you know it well.
Yeah, no. So I'm really excited. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this interview today.
Sure.
Just to give you a understand the audience for this show, I've got two podcasts. One's Super Creativity Podcast, which is like the thing I talk about, which is creativity, innovation, AI.
Yep.
This one that we're going to be doing is actually for my Speakers U podcast. So we have a program called Speakers U, and I interview some of the world's top professional speakers and also those that provide services to them as well.
Awesome.
So the kind of stuff that you do is obviously they're living in PowerPoint, these people. And so I just thought it'd be I saw your interview you did with Brett Dev.
Sure. You wouldn't believe the amount of people that have come to me off the back of that.
I mean, it's great. I mean, a great service that you've got. I can imagine it's totally valuable to all those kind of consulting clients that you work with who've, need to go to sleep at 10 p.m., finish their thing, get it back next morning. It makes completely sense. A great kind of USP and a great business model. And I think, most professional speakers, they do their own PowerPoint stuff. And they do, so they might have a designer on their team that kind of they get to work with. But I think your service, you probably already maybe work with professional speakers, but if, for our audience, we have about 10,000 people on our email list of professional speakers. Awesome. It just seems like this is a natural fit.
I love it. I'm excited by that. And actually, no, I don't work with that many professional speakers.
Okay.
It's mainly like the facilitators, the consultants, marketing and sales teams, people that need to present credentials. The keynote speaker is a little bit of a different requirement. I mean, we've done them before, but it's more of what I would call like a hand-holding relationship rather than a template brand standards churn out the document.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of a different approach is required. I think you need to get a little bit more of an understanding of the person as opposed to just the content.
Yeah, well, it'd be great to have this kind of conversation as well when we do the interview now. Also, I'll obviously share this as well to my broader audience, like a lot of the clients I work with. So my clients are companies like Dell Technologies, AstraZeneca. I think you make a GlaxoSmithKline clients, one of yours.
Yeah, both of those are actually.
Yeah, a lot of tech.
Big pharma tends to come.
Big pharma, tech, consulting, Accenture, EY, they're all kind of my clients as well. So when this goes out, I'll also share it on my LinkedIn and other places where more of that audience is sitting.
Awesome. Sure.
Because I think there's a lot of benefits here. So, so basically what I'd love to talk about in our interview, let me just pull up my notes here, is
James, before we kick off, I should have got myself a glass of water and I didn't.
You're fine. You're okay. Go and get yourself a glass of water.
Very novice. I'll be less than a minute.
Pull this up.
Okay.
And do you prefer Ash or Ashley?
I prefer Ash. I rebranded as Ash. It was always Ashley. And now I'm going into the US a lot more.
Yeah.
I dropped it to an Ash.
Yeah.
And also I wanted a unique searchable name.
Yeah. There's a famous drummer in London, a great famous session musician drummer called Ash. He does like all the sessions. He's like the guy, and everyone just kind of knows him as. I don't even know his sec. I can't remember. He's on Instagram. I can't even remember his second name, but everyone just knows him as Ash. It's just
He is the Ash.
He is the Ash. So you'll be Ash 2. You'll be Ash PowerPoint Ash.
Yeah, I am that.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the band Ash.
Of course. Yeah.
But
that as well.
Ashley, when you Google it, you get a lot of 20-year-old blonde American girls.
Yeah. I used to live in the States. I lived in California, and there's all those kind of little British things that don't kind of translate. And I always feel it's almost a little bit of a false friend sometimes if I'm speaking to American audiences, because I have to remember that I am speaking a different language,
Sure.
and for certain things, and
yeah. And will this be videoed when you put it out as a podcast? Yes. You video podcast it?
Yeah. So what we do is this goes out primarily as an audio podcast, but then what my team will do, all my team are in the Philippines, so they'll then just cut up in a little, the kind of highlights bits, and then that gets put out as videos, as promos, in order to promote the audio. So that's how we use the video. We don't really kind of put out the whole video on its own, but it's just the little clips from it.
And how put it this way, how is my background? Do you want me to choose something more natural, or you okay?
No, it's fantastic. It's great, beautifully branded.
Okay.
And what I'll do is at the end, I'll do the intro for you after we've done. That way I get to say, this is what we've spoken about. Sure. So we can get straight into the interview. Let me just quickly make sure that Ash Pemberton, founder of Overnight Design. Correct. I'm calling, I don't know what, in terms of how you want, I'm saying professional PowerPoint designers whose clients include Johnson & Johnson, PepsiCo, Unilever, Pfizer, and Heineken. Together with his team in Chiang Mai, Thailand, they produce over 1 million PowerPoint slides for their clients. Is that okay?
Yeah, 1.1 now.
1.1. Oh, there you go.
But over 1 million is fine, because that's how
easy number to remember. And then, so we're going to talk about your service, kind of how the service works, how you got started in this business. Sure. I know a little bit in terms of your background, obviously in London and coming to Thailand. What kind of work do you produce for your clients? So maybe just to kind of talk about, I know you do kind of more pitch deck stuff, presentations, but you also do explainer videos. That's another part of kind of what you do as well.
We'll touch onto that, sure.
And then, for those even that maybe don't feel that they can, afford, and they're just going to want to learn something from this and afford a professional designer, what are some of the common mistakes that you see clients make when it comes to designing their PowerPoints?
Sure.
Specifically, I know this comes up because people ask me this all the time. I use a lot of visuals and I have a lot of video because I'm using PowerPoint. It's behind me, so I can do that. But for general visuals, any kind of top tips when using visuals, for example, when in any kind of PowerPoint slides. And then apart from PowerPoint, I know lots of other speakers are using Keynote, Prezi. I'm even seeing some people use Canva. Do you have any preference, when you work with clients? Do you prefer them to use a particular platform? And then the kind of final one here, which is my team's in the Philippines. Your team is there all in Chiang Mai.
Yep.
Just tell us, what is it like to build a team? Because you didn't build a virtual team in Chiang Mai. You built a real team where you're actually all in an office together. So I'd love to know that experience.
I would love to tell you more about that. Yeah, that's a passion of mine. I can talk all day about that.
Fantastic. So if you're good, I am, we can get straight into it.
Sure. Good.
Okay. So let me just I'll do a little note here for my editor, Mark. Okay, Mark. So Ash Pemberton, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, James. Delighted.
Now, I first heard about you through a gentleman called, I think it's Brett Dev, I think based in Chiang Mai, Thailand, as a vlogger, talks about nomadism, digital nomadism, lots of other kind of interesting things. And he was talking to you about your service, and I just thought it was such a brilliant service that you offered that I thought I'd got to get you on the show to talk about your service. I think it could really help so many professional and aspiring speakers. So let's get straight to it. What is your service? Because I think it's brilliant. I think more people should know about it.
Sure. So originally we were simply called PowerPoint designers, and it wanted to be, deliver what it says on the tin. So essentially we work with people who should not be designing their own presentations. Generally, they are subject matter experts, they're consultants, they're busy professionals, or they're people that are under pressure because they're about to go and deliver a presentation the next day. Please don't stay up late, hunched over your computer, doing your own presentation design. It's frustrating. It's probably not your number one skill set. By outsourcing that to a design professional, especially as we utilize the time zones, so we work while our clients sleep, we will deliver you just this remarkable deck back. So that at 8 a.m. in the morning, you open your email and you're like, oh, these guys have designed it. It's on brand. It looks beautiful. And I think the essence is it justifies all the hard work that my clients have put into writing the content, developing the pitch, and then they've got to go and present it. But that middle stage is design, finesse, following brand guidelines, choosing the right images, typography. That's a completely different skill. So that's what we offer. We offer that middle stage, which is basically presentation design, but delivered fast.
Because I'm sure we've all experienced those. You go into a presentation, you may go to a conference and someone starts presenting and it looks like PowerPoint slides from 1995. And it's like, it's not a particularly, I think maybe the content is brilliant, but the person's actually saying, but it's just not being presented very well. I would love to know, like, when your clients, whether they are consultants or big, firms or speakers, when they come to you, let's say it's 10 o'clock at night, they send you something in order to produce something lovely, beautiful, and useful the next day. What is the something that they're actually sending to you? How are you ingesting all that information?
Absolutely. So 13 years ago, it used to be someone would draw something on a piece of paper and they would fax it to me. I had a service called eFax, which translated it to a PDF. I'd print it out and literally I would type up their words and I would draw whatever marketing model or organizational chart or bar graph that they basically hand drawn. Now, obviously, people are more familiar with actually putting that together digitally. So that might be a Word document. It might someone, from time to time, people would send me a script and say, please, can you build me some slides out of my script? Just something for me to talk around that follows the essence of what I'm trying to communicate. But the vast majority is people who know exactly what they want on each slide and have, should we just say, dumped it down, pasted it on, or stolen some bits and pieces from different PDFs or websites, and then put it into a file and sent me a messy file. And the ones that I get worried about are the ones when they send me something beautiful. It's like, oh, now I've really got a job ahead of me.
Deconstruct.
Yeah, it's when I open the file and it's a mismatch of fonts, the alignment's out, the typography, the color scheme. The first thing I do is look at the template. It's not following a template. It's like, well, I know what's needed. I know what we can do. So yeah, the thing that I'm sent is really words, pictures, images, but thrown together.
Fantastic. So that they're kind of throwing all this kind of stuff to you as well. Then take us through the process, because we should state here, this is not all just you that's kind of doing all this. It doesn't just come to you and then you're just doing everything yourself. Talk about, because what you've done is you put together a really interesting kind of team of mixtures of different talents and abilities and skills.
Absolutely. So it did used to be me. It did used to be just me. And then it used to be me and my wife who would help me with cutting and pasting. So I might set up a page and I know that we've got another 90 pages to go into that style. So she would assist me with that. Then my first hire was a graphic designer, very similar to myself, who stayed with me. His name is Jason, and him and I do a very similar job. But then we realized, actually, because we're in Thailand and the majority of our clients are either in America, Europe, or the UK, having that time zone advantage means we start work at about midnight UK time. So we actually became about 5 times more in demand for our service because of the time zone. Now, I'd love to tell you I planned this. I didn't. Like you can see, the name is Overnight Design. I didn't plan this. It was just, I wanted to live in Thailand. I'd fallen in love with the country. Originally, I think I even said to my main client who I was working for, that I would work UK hours, you know, oh, don't worry, I'll make up the hours. Like I really didn't have the vision to know that it was the time zone, it was the overnight express service that was going to make me 5 times busier, but it did. So it was myself, my wife, and one other designer working pretty much remotely, but we knew that we needed to build a team. I wanted to have a physical team rather than a remote team, because some of the briefs are tricky. Like I understand them, but could I just pass them on to a Thai graphic designer? Probably not. I wanted to have a team that I could literally kind of put my arm around and guide and be able to design, say, 5 different presentations at once with 5 different designers working on them. And the other thing that I've really learned is that presentation design can be quite stressful. Like every day you're hitting deadlines. Sometimes with my team now, 20 deadlines to hit every single day. You've got 20 people's work that needs to be delivered back to them for 8 a.m. It can be quite stressful. So one thing that I really wanted to instill is like the team culture, is where you support and you help each other. And if you see someone struggling or they're stressed out trying to hit a deadline, you can divide that work up. If we're all together, it just gives you that sense of teamwork, and it's a nicer environment to work in, but also it's way more supportive. So trying to get back to that original question, what we did is we recruited Thai designers. I put an advert in the Bangkok Post asking for PowerPoint designers, and I got a complete mix. Like everybody kind of thinks they're a PowerPoint designer. So I was overloaded with very odd requests to work, you know, as a PowerPoint designer. So actually we streamlined that, moved to Chiang Mai because there's 2 or 3 really good design universities here.
Because for people that don't know Thailand, so just explain, like Chiang Mai, most people may have been to Bangkok, for example, explain where Chiang Mai is.
Sure.
Also, maybe I think it'd be useful as well to explain how it's part of the whole kind of tech ecosystem that's been going over the past few years in Thailand.
Yeah, Thailand, obviously the #1 city is Bangkok. I couldn't hack it there. It's just too intense.
That's funny. So I interesting you said that, because my wife and I we spent a lot of time in both Bangkok and Chiang Mai as well. My wife loves Bangkok. I don't know why. It's like she's like not really a particularly big city person, but she just loves the energy and all things. I much prefer Chiang Mai. Because it's just it's cool. It's physically, it's temperature wise, it's cooler.
Yeah.
And there's just a little bit of I know that the street that you're based on or just off on, that's like quite a hipster kind of street that you're in as well.
Very, yeah. I mean, so much to talk about there. Maybe your wife, does she like to party? Does she like fine food and restaurants and shopping? And
I think it's the food thing. I think it's probably the food thing that she just loves. And obviously there's great food places in Chiang Mai as well. But I guess with Bangkok, it's a little bit more kind of international cuisine there.
Yeah, you can go kind of Michelin star in Bangkok, which we don't have in Chiang Mai, but we do have amazing street food. We have the northern food anyway, which is slightly different to southern Thailand. But essentially, Chiang Mai is the 2nd city in Thailand, but it still feels very small. We have the old city surrounded by an old historical wall with so many temples, and so it's like a real slow pace. And it's attracted a lot of digital nomads. It's attracted basically quite an international business community, but still very laid back. The pace of life in Chiang Mai is still very laid back. It's still a very nice place to live. But yeah, more and more there is a bit of a tech scene here. People are predicting that Chiang Mai could be like a massive tech hub. We're so close to China. A lot of Chinese, prior to COVID, a lot of Chinese visitors would come to Chiang Mai. We've even got like our own little section of Chinatown. But the bit that I decided to set up my office in is called Nim and Hayman. And let's just call that the trendy part of town. I always try and give like a London analogy.
It's basically Shoreditch in London, but transported into northern Thailand with a lot of guys with beards, a lot of hipsters, a lot of tattoos. Cool coffee shops.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, food here is amazing. Coffee shop culture. Yeah. There's a lot of arty, boutique-y type shops that when you walk into, you just think, how are you making money? And the answer is they're probably not. You know, they're just doing it for the love of having a boutique-y, arty environment and being there. So
yeah.
I loved that, and I probably wouldn't have moved to Chiang Mai if it didn't have Nimmenheimen. Nimmenheimen is like the cool area that I thought, yeah, I could live here, and I have done for the last 7 years.
So tell us a little bit more about the kind of work that you're producing for your clients. We've obviously spoken about maybe those more traditional presentations. The client goes to sleep at 10 p.m. in London or Paris or New York, send you all the stuff.
Yeah,
you get it, you work on it overnight, you deliver them something fantastic the next morning. But what other types of work are you creating for your client? What kind of briefs are you getting from your client just now?
Yeah, good question, because it started, like I told you, as PowerPoint designers, because that was 90% of the work that we did. And the reason being, everybody kind of knows how to use PowerPoint. Most people have it installed on their computer. When you open it, you get this blank screen, and if you drag and drop, it's pretty simple to use. So for that reason, when we give them agency standard design, like beautiful design, presented using PowerPoint objects and PowerPoint shapes that are all totally editable, people can make small amends. They can cut and paste things into their own presentation. They can reuse and re-edit our content very easily. So that's why PowerPoint was number one. But of course, we use Adobe Creative Suite for, let's call it, more professional solutions. So for instance, if you wanted a really beautiful brochure with, you know, bleed and crop marks and 4-color separation process that was going to be professionally printed, PowerPoint falls a little short. So we do use, and we do, it's actually what the Americans call standard collateral. So this is branded brochures, fact sheets, white papers, everything that a sales team comes to their marketing department for, and the marketing department comes to their designer for, and the designer is either overloaded or possibly doesn't quite fancy doing that standard collateral work when they're also working on a much more exciting design project. What that designer can do is kind of outsource some of the more repetitive tasks. So like working from a boilerplate with text and images, and you know you've got 20 to do, and it's potentially 20 hours work ahead of you. For a really creative designer, that can be quite dull. It can, you know, it can be quite restrictive, whereas their skills might be better, like working on some, like what I would call like hand-holding type design, where you really need to collaborate with people and get to the bottom of their brief, or maybe come up with something completely unique, as is more standard production. In fact, some of our clients do use us more like a production house. Okay. And just some other things that we do for them. One would be preparing graphics for the web. So that could be hero images, it could be banner adverts, and again, production of these files so that they're in the right format, ready to go. And more exciting than that is explainer videos. So these are traditionally about 60 seconds long. Well, every client says it won't be longer than 60 seconds, but like, you'd be surprised how quick that goes. So between 1 and 3 minutes is how long they tend to last. And what they would be is an animated 2D illustration that goes in sync with the voiceover. And so the clients would write the script, we'd get it professionally voiceovered, we'd put in some background music, and then we'd storyboard it. So what that means is going through every element of their script and suggesting some visuals, suggesting some animations and some transitions about how it would move and flow from scene to scene. So we do an awful lot of those. And one of the main reasons—
those can be great as well, because I see, like, speak like myself, for example, we sometimes use those kind of explainer videos, or I know a lot of our Speak As You members use them. Sometimes if they're selling online courses, online memberships, online programs, because it's just a really, if you've got something that's kind of it's more of a complex topic, something that's quite a nice way of kind of bringing it down,
yes,
and getting it focused. And the other ways I've actually seen them is some of our speakers who have books coming out as well, and they just want to create that sizzle video, that one little thing, that little 60-second thing. That's fantastic. And obviously we've got a lot of people here probably listening to this just now who are speaker trainers, and so trainers love explainer videos because you can take your ideas, even voiceover, you can give it to someone like, yourself, your team, and they can create something fantastic, some great video from it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a couple of other applications for it, and I'd love to share one, but obviously I think the most obvious would be like an instructional video. So I remember the first time I went to Dropbox's website, and it was quite a new concept at that point, the online file sharing and how it all works. Now give me the choice of reading or watching a 45-second explainer video, which just shows me exactly how to do it. I know what I prefer. I just find that is a really nice way to communicate and to stay on brand, and to explain something that potentially is a little bit complicated in a really simple way. That's what I think the essence of an explainer video should do, and use illustrations to make that process even simpler to understand.
Now, I'm sure you also get sent PowerPoints from clients to say, this is what we've been using. This is what we've been doing up to this point. You'd have to name names and things like that. But what are some of the common mistakes that you see folks that are making who are not professional designers of these? They're just kind of doing their PowerPoints for it. It could be a keynote that they're giving. It could be a sales pitch or a sales deck that they're doing. What are some of the common errors you're seeing them making?
Okay, so number one would be, who are we presenting to? So in my industry, when I'm working for consultants, if we're presenting to brand managers or to marketing managers and we don't correctly follow their brand guidelines, you've lost them on day one. So an example of that, a long-term client of mine is Heineken. When we choose images for Heineken presentations or any of their sales material, we never pick anyone under 25. That's actually in their brand guidelines because they don't want the association with young people and alcohol. Yep. So that's just one example. But if you didn't know that and you put a very cool looking 20-year-old and the brand manager just picks up on that straight away, even on the front cover, you might have lost them. Or more than that, if you use the wrong logo or you incorrectly apply their fonts or their colors, there's so many things that you can do to lose those marketing or brand people before you've even started talking about your content. But the biggest one, I would say, is this a presentation or is it a document? How are you actually going to be presenting it? Are you sending this document for someone to be able to browse through it at their own pace? Or are you presenting to them? If so, think about use of reveals. Don't overpopulate your slides. If you put things on a screen, or if you're presenting from a laptop and you put it on a screen in front of people, they will read ahead 100% of the time. They won't follow you. They won't be listening to you, and you'll have created a distraction with how you're doing. So my number one thing is, let's take a step back. How are you going to deliver this presentation? Is it now going to be on a Zoom call? Is it going to be a face-to-face meeting? Or is it a document that you're sending ahead? Because they're different requirements. And often you need 3. Often you might need 4 because you might have the explainer video. So you'd send something ahead, you give them something that they can read, you'd present something with way less words, way more visual, and some builds so that you're not giving away all of your information ahead of delivering it. And then this is the beauty, leave them with an explainer video, which is new. It's not the same as what they've seen already. This is something new for them to look at. And the explainer video will help you sell your story to people who weren't present in that meeting. So don't
it helps them sell up, essentially.
Yeah, don't rely on the person that you've presented to then do your internal selling to other key stakeholders. leave them with the video, and it's easy for me to say because they tend to cost about £2,500 to produce each one. But if it's a multi-million or £1,000 pitch, then it could well be money well spent.
But it's fantastic you talk. I mean, this is great hearing this. And I was doing a presentation recently, and I needed to kind of brush up on my just in terms of some of the kind of presentation, the kind of slide stuff that I was wanting to do. And I read 2 great books, actually 3 great books around it. One was Presentation Zen. One was Nancy Duarte's Resonate, and then I think she did a follow-up one which is called Slideology.
Yeah.
And that was one of the key things I took away from one of those books. What you just explained there was thinking about what are the document, what are the what do they in advertising, they call it not outputs. There's another word phrase that they use for it, deliverables, or what other things are for it. Because and sometimes and I think possibly I may be the only speaker that I know, certainly all the bureaus I work with, I said, you're the only speaker we know that asked this. I am the only speaker that asked for the brand guide from the client,
right,
before I deliver a presentation, because I want to know. You mentioned things like the imagery, like for example, here I've got loads of different like pocket squares, because when I present, I want to be using their brand colors. Sure. Yeah, and if I'm using certain backgrounds, you mentioned like in a lot of brand guides, they'll say if we're going to use pictures of has to have people doing something active, for example. Although, things like that. And so you think, okay, that's great. How can I integrate? You don't have to be, I don't feel I have to be slavish, because they're also bringing me from my expertise as well. Yeah. But I feel it's just like part of it is just showing respect to the client. That, there's that phrase I heard the other day. I was doing an event for Bell in Canada, and they have a phrase which I'd never heard before. Actually, I really love this. Salespeople use all the time. It's called "Show me that you know me." Oh, show me that you know me. And I just thought it was a really nice phrase, and you can do that visually. There's lots of different ways to do that. So that's great. So you've got these really kind of common ones. What about this? We're kind of on this topic of images. Yeah. What do you see when you kind of see bad PowerPoint around the use of images? What are those kind of like, you just kind of see it's like, oh no, they've done this again. What are those things?
I mean, if you really want to start at the bottom, let's go for Comic Sans fonts and clip art. So that you don't get any worse than that. It really doesn't get worse than that. And then kind of next stage up would be, I've chosen an image, but it's pixelated. It's really poor quality, or it's watermarked because I've stolen it from a photograph library and not paid for it. Mm-hmm. That's next stage up. Probably third would then be just totally wacky or bizarre or unrelated or distracting. And then kind of working your way up to a picture that really encapsulates the message that you're trying to deliver. And I've got so many cases where I've chosen an image, presented it to people, and they've just absolutely loved it. And they've said, you've nailed exactly what it was I was trying to communicate with one image. And my philosophy is, get that on the front cover. So when you come in to present, put up your front cover, which has this beautiful image and just sets the scene and can say so much about you, your understanding of the brand, or, the proposal that you're about to deliver. If you can find that killer image, get it up there, make it full page, and then maybe, beautifully typeset some copy around that. And there are so many really good photographic libraries online now. There's kind of like no excuse to be using bad images. Yeah. And I don't know if you want me to share a couple of tips.
I know the ones I use all the time. We use Unsplash and Pexels, two of the ones we use, and then we use paid ones like Shutterstock with it is I kind of really like. But what ones are you recommending?
So I would say if you want free images, Unsplash is great. It will tell you the name of the artist and just give them a reference, and then you're free to use that image commercially, which is brilliant because you'll get high-res images from that. If you're not publishing, by that I mean putting it online, if you're not printing or using it for your commercial benefit, you can use any image. Don't be restricted and think that you can't use images. You can, as long as you're not commercially gaining from it. Mm-hmm. But my tips are, number one, use a Google Images search and add the search term wallpaper. So I'm going to go back to Heineken because I've done so much work for them. If you would type in Heineken and do an image search, you're going to get what you'd expect, pictures of beers, possibly people drinking. But if you do Heineken wallpaper, you're going to get these beautifully professionally designed 16:9 high-res images. And when you use them in your presentation, people just look at you and go, how long did it take you to do that? It didn't. It took me a search, but you'll be amazed. You can change the word Heineken, but keep the word wallpaper and do some Google searches and see what you get back. It's quite unbelievable. That's one
a great
really good
tip. That's a really nice tip there. Thank you for sharing that.
I've got just one more if you want it. Yeah. So if you're looking for inspiration about how things should look, go to Pinterest. Pinterest is phenomenal for this. And it will just set you off in the right direction. You'll get, as a designer, the first thing I always do is seek some inspiration, let's see what's out there already, and then how I can adapt that to fit my client brief. Final one, Getty Images. So I started using Getty Images when they used to send thick booklets to design agencies full of images that you would scan or download from a CD. But now everything is online. And the reason why I say go to Getty is because their search engine is phenomenal. It will give you so many really creative alternative images. And one example that I'd like to share is I used to do a lot of work for segmentation, right? This is a marketing process where you divide things into different socioeconomic groups or just segment a market. And people would always say to me, oh, I need an image to represent segmentation. So it's like pieces of orange, slices of cake, pieces of pizza. And it was just always the same thing coming back. But by going to Getty Images and using just your normal search terms, it gives you just this array of options. So even if you're not willing to spend 800 or 1,500 pounds for that killer image, use Getty, get your inspiration from there and see what it gives you in terms of like options, and then maybe go to Unsplash and find a free image, or use a different option.
But I think for some of those you mentioned, like Getty, I think I've used Getty before because I am the I guess I'm the client. I'm the person still get the license for it, and if you're giving a presentation, especially if you're giving a signature presentation, which you're going to be giving multiple times,
sure.
If an image does cost $1,000, but you're giving over the course of a year, you're maybe giving that presentation or that part of the presentation 50 times. Yep. Actually, it's fine. It's not the worst thing in the world, and it's a great image, and no one else is probably going to be using that image as well. So sometimes it does pay.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. When a lot of our work is very corporate, and there's no possible way that a big corporation we've used Heineken all the way, but the one I'm thinking of now is SAP. There's no possible way that they would want anybody to use an image that they're using, to the point where they'll probably commission a professional photographer to create something totally bespoke. But next stage down from that is go to Getty, find this amazing image, and then buy it exclusively, so no one else can use that. And when you're dealing with big corporates, $1,000 or £1,000 for that is not an issue. Now, maybe for you and I, it might be.
Maybe this episode should have been sponsored by Microsoft, because we have been talking about PowerPoint a lot, but I'm guessing some of your other clients use other things like Keynote or Prezi, or I'm seeing some people start to use Canva for certain things as well. Do you have a preference for any of these platforms?
I do. And Microsoft should have sponsored us. So I'll talk about the others in a sec, but the reason why we do everything in PowerPoint is because it's the most powerful. If I was to do something in Canva and I'd present it to my client and they'd go, yeah, it's good, but I just need this moving, this adjusting, and I want some flexibility. Can't do it. Same with Prezi. If you love that dive in animation, if you love to be able to navigate around And most people, when they see Prezi, they were like, yeah, that looks really brilliant. But if you do that too much, it makes you nauseous. It's like, it's an overkill. So if you really want that effect, Mr. Client, then what I'd suggest is that we animate something for you using Adobe Creative Suite, because then you've got complete control over, you know, what the next sequence is and how it would work and how it runs for you. So the customizable solution is Adobe Creative Suite and PowerPoint. These are our two. These are what we do best.
And it's interesting, like, so over the past 14 months, it's been all virtual keynotes or hybrid or hologram ones I've been doing. And usually when you're in these spaces, I'm filming against an entirely green screen, full body. They place me in the middle of a virtual arena or conference place or wherever it is. And they use a great tool called Unreal Engine to create these virtual environments, like I'm in a game, essentially. Wow. And what I found just kind of using different things is because everything around me, I'm basically just in a green room doing it, but everything around me is moving. They've organized their macros in terms of, so that let that camera pan to then, and then put the red light up a little bit longer, and then do this so you can see a bit more of a shadow. Because there's so much going on there, I actually found it's better to keep the slides part, which maybe even still presented me on a virtual screen behind me, quite 2D, quite flat, because there's just so much 3D going on. Like the eye is just getting confused, and I just need to bring it back. And like I used a picture the other day. I was talking about something which was about Madagascan lemurs, and like monkeys. So and it was just like a really beautiful image of a Madagascan lemur I had behind me, and I just saw it just really punched out when you set it in that 3D environment. If I'd used like a 3D graph or something that was kind of fancier, I think it just felt it would have got lost. So great photography and great typography in that virtual space. I'm just finding that's what I'm doing as a speaker just now.
It's interesting because you've made me think of when we design presentations for a physical conference. You need to know what the conference set is going to look like. Like, how branded is that conference set? Because if it's heavily branded already, the last thing you want on a PowerPoint slide is another logo. And also, how does the colors and like the overall impression, what size is the screen? So yeah, there's a lot to consider when you're doing this. But obviously 90% of the cases that we do are people will just be looking at the screen. You know, there's no 3D studio, there's no big conference set. It's just a PowerPoint presentation that's going to be presented on screen. So let's forget PowerPoint. It's just an on-screen presentation. And potentially we're going to follow up with a PDF document because everybody can open a PDF. The fact is that we power both of those deliverables from PowerPoint because it's the designer's choice.
It's designer's choice. And as we start to open up now, the world starts to open up when people are traveling in, I am starting to see there's a little bit of a move. It's almost like we're going through, like when I was the first time I was in Chiang Mai, there was a whole, I think I was living in California at that point. I decided to take a break from California, my wife and I, and we were kind of going through digital nomadism 1.0. So like the Tim Ferriss version. I think I'd met Tim at an event in San Francisco, and he got a copy of his book, and I was speaking to him and like, oh, this sounds really interesting. Okay, let's go and do Chiang Mai for one winter. And at that point, it was us as the foreigners Farang, I guess, going into Thailand, having a great life because you're getting paid in dollars, living in Thai baht. Yes. But it was like a 1.0 version. And there was a certain kind of thing there. It's interesting because what I'm starting to see now a little bit is either because some speakers now can do all of their stuff virtually, don't even have to get onto a plane. They could be a 100% virtual keynote speaker if they want to do that. And I know some speakers that are doing that. They're suddenly, or even if they are traveling, maybe not traveling as much. So they don't need to be right sitting at Orlando airport, be living like some speakers would do. They would be right next to Heathrow or Orlando, or because it's easy for them to fly in and out. Sure. It's allowed some of them to think about, well, where do I want to be based? And for many more successful speakers, they're going to have a team. And so like someone like myself, I've got a team of 5 in the Philippines. And as we've been talking about, we're thinking about like, well, maybe it's time now to maybe take a switch to go into, I guess, I don't know if it even is called digital nomad 2.0, but where you can have that kind of lifestyle of going and living in a really beautiful place like a Thailand, but actually building your team physically around you in the space that you're in. So I would love to know, because you've kind of lived different lives. You've kind of done the digital nomad thing. You've done living in a big city in the UK, in London. You've done the building a team in Thailand. What does that part, that final part, what does that been bringing to your life as an entrepreneur, as a person?
Wow, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, because you've kind of stumbled on three different stages of my life. So working in the city in London for big banks, management consultancies, as a PowerPoint designer, tiring, hard work, physically draining, having to work until 3 a.m. and then, given I always remember this from the banks, they would chauffeur drive you home in a Mercedes. That felt good, age 20, but getting home at 3 a.m., no, sleeping during the day, no, hated it. As a digital nomad, I never really considered myself to be a digital nomad because I wasn't that nomadic. I would go to Thailand. Myself and my wife have lived in so many different parts of Thailand, but my first thing would be I'd get my laptop out and I'd check the internet speed. And is it good enough for me to work from here? Asking them questions. Who's the internet with? How reliable is it? How often do we have power cuts? And my favorite place to live was Koh Chang. And we actually got Cat Telecom, which is a big internet service provider in Thailand, to hardwire my internet connection down a pier. So our home was actually on stilts over the sea, and I had a 4 meg internet connection sort of 12 years ago, and it was the best. It really was. I just had, yeah, except one thing. When I turned my webcam on, my clients started to hate me. They were like, you lived there. So in the end, didn't do that. And then moving to Chiang Mai was really about finding people that could support me. I told you I didn't want to live in Bangkok, and I would never have found a team in Koh Samui, Koh Chang, or any of these southern beautiful islands. I would never have found the caliber or the commitment that I was looking for from a graphic design team. So Chiang Mai has a couple of universities. It has a pretty good standard of English literature. All of my designers work in English language. They're not fluent, but they are kind of like digitally fluent, like messenger type fluency. We commute using an app called Line, and you can type anything to them and they understand. But if you were to write a brief, quite an elegant brief in English, there's many things that they would stumble across. So I wanted to be in a physical office with them. I wanted to be able to control the workflow, to be hands-on where needed, and to be able to guide them. So that was why we went for Chiang Mai, and that's why we went for a physical office with a physical team. But saying that, still probably 80% of my team are still working remotely because COVID pushed us remotely. And my last hire, because I needed to hire more staff, we're always recruiting, looking out for talented PowerPoint people. And because we now have become sort of like an 80% remote company, my last hire was from Mumbai, was an Indian. And he's just been a breath of fresh air, and now the idea that I can recruit outside of Chiang Mai, but still have my office there. And a couple of my clients have said that they feel more reassured that they're sending it to an agency with a physical office, as opposed to just sending it out to the internet and not knowing if it's going to be in Thailand or if it's going to be in India or if it's going to be anywhere. Because presentations normally contain quite a lot of confidential information. We sign non-disclosure acts with all of our clients. Often it can be presenting like brand strategy for the next 5 years, and it's incredibly sensitive information. So my clients needed that reassurance from me, and they kind of wanted me to have this physical office and to control it.
Well, it's great just seeing that progression, like what you've been doing. Also, it's been great just watching, even from afar, and occasionally visiting back into Chiang Mai, seeing it go from people just sitting in coffee shops to then co-working spaces, to then them taking larger offices and starting to employ local Thais as well. For those of you who don't know, I know that there's going to be some big changes happening just now with the Thailand government in terms of their smart visa for entrepreneurs and for creative individuals.
Oh, about time.
It's going to be much easier, because I know a lot of people that were living in Thailand were having to do what they call the visa run, where they're having to go over to Myanmar and different places.
Well, let me just share just something on that, because this was madness. The Thai government were missing an opportunity to actually get some visa tax. They were busting, they were raiding co-working spaces. This is how insane it was. And people are just sitting there going, I just want to try and earn a living from my laptop. And they were getting arrested because they didn't have the right visa. And when you ask the authorities, well, what visa can I have? You're not eligible for one. So it was just complete madness. So it's very good that the smart visa's here.
Yeah.
Also, there's been a bit of a relaxation on visas, but what they have done is they've eliminated that 90-day or 30-day border run. Yeah. They didn't want that. They don't want, Thailand does not want that type of tourist here anymore. Yeah. And they've made it incredibly hard for people to do that.
But it's great just seeing that. I guess it's the evolution of a country as well. Seeing now they're really going after if you're a speaker, like for example, if you have a skill where you maybe have to travel around the world, or you're making online courses and you're building and you're creating intellectual property, you're creating worth, value, perfect. And you can work from anywhere. Perfect. There's that. But also, I think it's interesting because they're also going after another type of visa they're really promoting, which is a kind of early retirement visa. So if someone's over 50 years of age, I think it was.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of speakers that fall into that situation of they work maybe for a big a Deloitte or a big firm, big bank, big consulting firm, decide to kind of go out on the road now and be a keynote speaker because they've got this passionate thing that they want to share with the world. Want to lower their costs, don't need to live in New York or San Francisco anymore, kind of lower their costs, but they're not really retiring. That's not their vibe, but they want to have a different pace of life. So I think between that, whatever they're going to call that nomad entrepreneur visa and the retirement visa part, I think that's going to be a real boon for Thailand.
I think so too. And you've missed the visa that I'm on.
Which is?
Marriage.
Yes,
so it's always an option, believe me, boys and girls.
I don't think I can get away with that one stuff out.
There's someone for everyone over here.
Well, Ash, thank you so much for coming on today, sharing all about your company. If people want to learn more about you, maybe schedule a consultation call, a discovery call with one of your teams, talk about their PowerPoint and their requirements. Where's the best place for them to go and do that?
Sure. Please start by coming to visit my website, which is overnight.design. So that's the best place. And if you want to contact me directly, it would just be emailing Ash, ASH, at overnight.design.
Well, Ash, thank you so much for coming on the show. I wish you continued success with your business.
I really appreciate that. Thanks, James. It's great talking to you.
And we're done. We're out.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. That was great.
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. It's really nice to talk to you. And I'm so impressed with your background. It looks so good.
Well, yeah, no, it's been an interesting, like all of us, interesting 14 months of suddenly pivoting to, because I think in 2019, I think I spoke in 25 countries in 2019.
Did you?
I did about 50 keynotes. But this year is going to be our biggest year ever already. In fact, we're only halfway through the year. I booked more business this year than we booked in the entire of 2019, because it's all virtual. And so I was doing one yesterday for Bell Canada, one of my clients. I've got one tomorrow one today for a big artificial intelligence company in India, they're actually based in India. Next week it's for Dell, it's just non-stop really. So it's amazing, like virtual, what we can do now. It's opened up lots of new possibilities.
So what will you be talking about to these big corporate clients? What's the subject?
Yeah, so I speak on creativity, innovation, and artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about on the creativity side, some clients will bring me in to talk more about creativity, how to get their people to unlock their creative potential, to be more creative in a business context, not an artistic kind of concept, but how to collaborate better, how to generate ideas. So, for example, I'm just about to go out to Rome to do one for UPS, and that is the people that deal with the pharmaceutical distribution side of UPS. So all the like Moderna, Pfizer vaccine, how will those get around? The people that do the delivery side of that. So for them, it's this period, the company's just growing ridiculous, like 60% this year as part of this business. But they've been very productive, but they've not been particularly innovative because they've been so focused on get the work, that they haven't had a chance to take a step back. Like, okay, what are we going to do next? What's the next things? How are we going to innovate in this field? So my job is I come in and I keynote and I can inspire them by different companies, how they're talking about in terms of creativity or innovation. The thing that I get booked mostly for now is looking at how artificial intelligence is augmenting humans and human teams, especially if they're doing creative or innovative work. So in your space, like things like generative design, companies like Autodesk. So now if I want to design a chair, for example, I can just work with an AI. I want to design a chair, it needs to be this size, this much weight, cost this much, use these materials. It'll create thousands of different designs. Then the human design team can review the designs and say, okay, let's prototype these ones here.
Right.
So it's like human plus machine creativity is kind of what I call it super creativity. That's what I talk about. And you already, even like PowerPoint, I'm seeing like now you have the AI stuff starting to come in on that. The stuff that's going on at Microsoft just now, I speak about, which is GPT-3 and how that's starting to come out. So now you could be able to say, okay, let's say a PowerPoint, create me a slide with a girl of 27 in it who is smiling, looking to the left with and in the top left-hand corner, this word in this font, and it will just create it. So natural language processing. So that's kind of the stuff I kind of speak about as well. And the potential of that, not to replace people, but to allow us as humans to do what we're better at doing, which is, really like really properly creating new things, not doing the churn stuff, not doing just the gig stuff, but actually really reinventing how things are done.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just instantly it makes me think, well, not everyone can do that. It's
going to take change.
A big change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the world we're living
education
in.
systems, it's, I know, my team's in the Philippines, and my one criticisms of in working in, especially with Filipinos, and it's not their fault. It's basically the education system that they've had in the country is it's very kind of rote learning. It doesn't encourage creative thinking particularly. But there's other countries in the world that have done that, do build in different types of ways of learning. I don't know about Thailand. I've only ever worked for one Thai client, which is McDonald's in Thailand. I did some stuff for them in Bangkok before. So I don't know the Thai, apart from just being a kind of tourist there and hanging out, but I haven't worked with a lot of Thais. So I don't know in terms of creativity where that sits.
Yeah, I mean, there's many stereotypes about the Thais, and I'm not sure if you need to hear them all from me, but yeah, generally the biggest stereotype is children are told off for questioning the teacher.
It's a curiosity, knocking curiosity out of them.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know. The whole schooling model can change as far as I'm concerned. We've just had homeschooling, schools closed. Everything now can be turned on its head, and I think it will be for the better.
Yeah, I've got friends in Singapore who actually just moved back to Sweden, and they've been homeschooling their kids, but then they suddenly want, why don't we just get teachers? So they've got a teacher in Mumbai, they've got a teacher that teaches them mathematics to kids, they've got a teacher in Colombia that's teaching them Spanish, and it's like suddenly you've created this world classroom. I think that what I tend to find, and I don't know exactly where Thailand sits on this, but I speak a lot to clients in different parts of Asia, and what you tend to find in more East Asia, so China, Japan, North Korea, Korea, is that if you ask them, do you consider yourself to be creative? It's going to be much lower than if I was to ask that same question to an Indian or to an American or to a British person. And it's not necessarily because they are less creative. It's simply because their conception of, or what they've been told creativity is an American style of creativity or a Western style of creativity. And those countries, or Western countries, they come from a Christian or Judaic background, which is the world was created in 7 days type stuff. So like creativity is something like from nothing. But in more Asian countries, we come from a Buddhist or a Confucian background, which is this idea that, well, nothing's created from nothing. Something is recreated or remade. And that's a different conception of creativity. And so sometimes it's just basically explained to people, if I speak in some of those countries, like, this thing that you were told about creativity, like lone creative genius stuff, all that kind of stuff, is not necessarily true. There's a different way of thinking about creativity that's just a bit more, it's less about the ego, the individual, the I, and it's more about the we. And I find that message chimes a little bit strongly if I'm speaking in parts of Asia.
It's good. I've never heard that before. That's interesting.
So anyway, that's the kind of stuff I do.
Yeah, cool. Excellent.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. I'll have a wonderful day. All the best. Stay safe. I know there's lockdowns going on in Bangkok. I'm not sure what Chiang Mai's like just now, but look after yourself. And hopefully one day, if I come back over to Chiang Mai, we can go and have a coffee somewhere.
Please be sure to look me up if you do.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Take
James.
care.
All the
Bye-bye.
best. Bye-bye.